30 minutes of power.
Good morning and welcome back to another lovely episode of TOP, your one-stop shop for all things encouraging, entertaining, and motivating. It's 30 minutes of power, people. What's going on? Listen, today I have a powerhouse guest known as Jim Carrey with a PhD. Listen, I've only known this guy for a little bit, but we've been having quite some time since meeting. This is Danny Brassell. He has spoken on over 3,500 stages. Can you believe that? And has authored 21 books. Some of them you will see positioned behind him. He helps entrepreneurs turn their stories into powerful tools for impact and income. What a wonderful place to have Danny this morning. Welcome to the show, Danny. How you doing, brother?
Fantastic, Jory. Thanks so much for having me. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy in the world. We need a lot more of your energy. I just absolutely adore you.
Oh, I appreciate it. And you know what? I took a little deep dive in my name, and my name actually does come from the word joy. So,
Perfect.
listen, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. Listen, I love to start right here because people get to see the success, right? If they Google your name, they see all the accolades on the back end. But I want to ask, who was Danny before the stages, before the books?
That's great, Jory. Well, if I was going to write an autobiography, it would probably be called Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me the City Beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all ages, Jory, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything financially. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from the experience. First of all, I learned that my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer, and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, Jory, I learned that money's not everything because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge people anymore because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you probably don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess. It took a catastrophe, but the more I read my Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And then fifth, and probably most applicable for today, is I didn't want to file for bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to earn this much more money this year. So I started speaking on the side, and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Jory, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who wanted me to coach them. And I have to admit, I really resisted coaching for a long time, Jory, because you need to know this about me. I'm obsessive compulsive. I will not let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and business owners and executives, I find that they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's been some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. So we can go down whatever path you choose, my friend.
Well, so as a former educator and a current speaker and entrepreneur, this interview is twofold. I want to make sure that you get your flowers while you are still present and able to receive them first and foremost. This isn't random. This I know we got matched somewhere, somehow, some way on the Ethernets of Pod Match. But I always believe that when God allows me to be with people, it is for me to pour into them. So yes, I will ask questions. I will extract the goodness. I will give very concrete ways, right, that you can be of service to my listeners. I'm a practicals girl. I love steps, so I love the 5 steps. I love it. You got my heart already. I know you're an educator because only educators come with steps like that.
That's right.
But I have questions. And I hope, Danny, you have answers.
Okay.
I want to start back as an educator, because I was in education for 18 years, recently left, took the plunge, went full time into my business, and God
Hmm.
has blessed it tremendously. Um, but what was the defining moment that changed your path? Because you talked about a kind of multitude of different paths that you could have gone down and could have stayed on. But if you know how you are in terms of being the one who doesn't allow people to fail, what was that shift that allowed you to say yes to that opportunity?
I love it. I love it, Jory. It's a deep question. I've never been asked that. Well, that's why when people ask me if I have regrets in life, I'm like, no, I would do everything the same way. Yeah, I don't want to get Christiany on this, but it's in Genesis 50:20 where basically Jacob is about to die and he dies and Joseph's brother's like, oh no, now Joseph's going to take vengeance on us, and so they come up to Joseph and they're all swarming. They're like, hey Joe, before Dad died, he said like all that bad stuff we did to you, you're not supposed to like take vengeance on us for all of that. And Joseph, it's really cool. He looks at his brothers. He's like, no, 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 man. Everything you meant for evil got meant for good. And so, really, the answer to your question, Jory, is I'm a big believer in adversity. Adversity, that's why I love the movie Rocky. How can you not like Rocky? Rocky, there's nothing beautiful about the way he fights. He's just rough, but he goes down, but he always gets back up. And that's the thing. It's not failure if you keep on getting back up. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people out there listening right now, and they're being beaten. I was at an event a couple of months ago, and the first two speakers they said you need to enjoy the journey. And I guess I was feeling facetious that day because I got on stage and I'm like, you ever notice the people who say enjoy the journey have already succeeded? I mean, when you couldn't pay rent, were you like, man, I'm really enjoying this journey. It's great. My kids are starving. I'm having a lot of. No, nobody enjoys the journey. But I think you can look back and say, wow, that negative thing is what caused this positive thing. And so all the different pivots in my life, something bad happened, but God opened a better door and something even better happened. And so for the people out there, and there's a lot of people out there I know listening to you, Jory, that are struggling. And I want them to know that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, but don't stay down. You get back up. You always get back up. I mean, you look at you spending 18 years in education. I mean, it breaks my heart. We lose great educators like you, and I know exactly why we lose great educators like you. I've been in education. It's not about the kids usually. Sometimes it's about the parents, but usually it's the bureaucracy and the nonsense and just beating it out of you like, oh, you have to do this thing, and oh, you can't be creative with this, and we want everybody on the same page, and it's just not. I mean, I got fired 26 times as a teacher because I have a mouth on me, because I always said if the answer to my question is not because that's what's best for this kid, why are we doing it? It's really easy to teach 33 kids. It's not easy to teach 33 individuals. And that's the difference between teaching and being a really good teacher, is how do I make sure that this kid feels special, and I acknowledge them. So I know that's a very long answer to your short question, but really the gist of my answer is embrace the adversity, because better things happen because of that. You might not feel it at the moment. I guarantee you, when I was going through it, oh, it sucked. I mean, and all of us are always going through something that sucks. But I take faith in looking back and realizing, yeah, but I needed that to happen to grow. And, even like my real estate scam, I was very blessed because it really humbled me. I needed that.
And so you answered the question as you should have answered the question, because I was going to go back and I was going to ask about your experience being an inner city teacher. I taught in the inner city, Manhattan, for about 5 years, and then the last years, decade plus, was spent teaching in Queens. And it was not just a bureaucracy. Once I got clear on my values, I got clear on what I was born and positioned to do, like why God created me specifically,
Mhm.
I realized that there was a mismatch, like the thing that I was created to do, I couldn't do within that system.
Yeah.
And so stepping out of the system has allowed me to I still have relationships with those students. Like we're connected Facebook and YouTube and all the things. But I think for me, what I'm able to give them now is the undoctored, unadulterated truth of God. And I couldn't do that in that institution, in that system. And so I love that you did bring them in. And if you get as Christianese as you want to, brother, that's more than fine. We are quite fine. It will not be edited out. God belongs in every conversation. No
Yeah.
edit them out. But you are a very engaging speaker. When did you learn that like storytelling was your superpower?
Well, Jory, I mean, I taught all age levels and I did it the wrong way. I started off teaching high school, then I went to middle school, then upper elementary, then lower elementary to pretty soon. Instead of preparing kids for college, I was coming home with snot marks all over my pants from my little ones hugging me all day. And what I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner, but what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. I call kindergarten New York, New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere because they got about a 7 minute attention span. And that's really what made me a much better and engaging speaker was realizing, this is lame. How do I make lame stuff more interesting and engaging? And so I really owe a debt to my little ones for teaching me that.
So okay, you talk a lot about storytelling, and I'm a storyteller. I love storytelling. My uncle used to call me Jory, say Jory, tell a story. But he was talking about lying. We stopped doing that, praise God. But storytelling as a tool, it's not just about inspiring. And I broke this down to someone yesterday. I said storytelling should be transformational.
Mm.
Why do you believe that entrepreneurs struggle to tell their story effectively?
You just hit the nail right on the head there, Jory. The difference between a good presentation and a great presentation is good presenters tell stories. Great presenters tell stories with intention, trying to get people towards that transformational point, that call to action. It's very important. And so you need to. So here's an exercise I do with my clients. You can do this later on if you want, Jory. Sit down in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice, and for an hour, write down every story that's ever happened in your life. And I don't mean the entire story, I just mean like triggers, like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time Dad spilt mustard on his tie when we were at that fancy restaurant. In an hour, you'll come up with literally hundreds of stories like this, just little triggers like that. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then I want you to think about what's this story really about? Oh, this is actually a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story uh, about my priorities. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. And so on my computer, I have hundreds of files with literally tens of thousands of stories. So when I'm putting together a presentation and I want my audience to have a certain emotion, I know exactly the type of story that I need to tell for that. So, for example, yesterday I was speaking to a bunch of entrepreneurs that are trying to raise capital. And so one of the big things that a lot of people think when they speak, they think they have to be extraordinary. And I totally disagree with that. I think actually it's better when you're ordinary. For example, I'm working with a client right now from Saudi Arabia, and he's climbed the highest peak on all 7 continents. He swam with sharks in Madagascar. He did the Iditarod in Alaska. And I look at him, I'm like, nobody in your audience can relate to you. Nobody in your audience has climbed Mount Everest. But I guarantee you, everybody in your audience peed their pants when they were 6 years old. That's a story that's going to connect with people. So yesterday, when I was talking to these entrepreneurs about raising capital, I said, so I like to take a lot of stories from the classroom. I know you've got to do this too, Jory. It's just the best way to do it. So I said, when I was an elementary school teacher, I was once asked to judge the science fair, and there was 3 finalists. The first finalist, her project was the effect of photosynthesis on chlorophyll development. I mean, she had a trifold, she had 47 bullet points, she had 3 big graphs. The second finalist, he did a comparative analysis of soil density. He had graphs, he had figures, he had laminated soil. The third finalist had had a baking soda volcano that erupted every 90 seconds. Chlorophyll, dirt, volcano. Which one do you think drew everybody's attention? Now, the volcano, it wasn't the most data-driven project. It wasn't even actually accurate in a lot of stuff, but it had pizzazz. It got people curious. It drew people's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, so many of you are pitching investors with chlorophyll. You're looking for capital with dirt samples. You're ignoring the fact that to get people to lean in, you need a volcano. So what I've done is I've just taken a quick little story as a metaphor and I've demonstrated to the audience. Now, here's what you're doing wrong in your presentations. And this is the power of storytelling. But I have an intention because what I'm trying to do with these entrepreneurs is to show them why they should be hiring me to coach them on being more effective communicators, whether they're delivering a presentation as a keynote address or pitching investors or doing an elevator pitch one-on-one. So that's how you use storytelling. Again, long answer to your short question.
I love it because so in my work, I help aspiring authors create these magical books and now help build these books out into authority and helping them with visibility. And now we've created this legion, agents. And so we have all the parts and pieces to make the story make money. But the hardest part for all these people is, and I know you've probably heard this, but my story isn't interesting enough. Who would even care to read this? There are so many other people talking about this. Why would they listen to me? What would you say to these people?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people talking about the same thing, but they didn't do it the same way as you did. I mean, a lot of different basketball players doesn't mean Michael Jordan and LeBron James aren't both studs. They both do it their own way, very differently.
And so talking about turning the mic into money, how do you go from speaking to actually generating clients and revenue?
Yeah, so most of the people I mean, I do work with speakers, but most of the people I work with are entrepreneurs and business owners that either fear speaking or they have no interest in speaking whatsoever. And what I show them is how to convert those audiences into clients because that's the only thing I actually am interested in. I mean, I want you to move hearts, but more importantly, I want you to move the needle. Like, I'll have clients that say, "Hey, I got a standing ovation." I'm like, "That's wonderful." Or they'll say, "People think I'm a really good speaker." I'm like, "That's great. But the only way I'm going to measure your effectiveness is how many people in your audience decided to take the next step with you." And it can be an unpaid next step. So, for example, subscribe to my podcast, or if I'm working with a politician, vote for me. More typically, it's usually a paid offer, like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. But we're gonna check your numbers. How many people decided to take that next step with you? So, for example, I was working with a financial planner. By the way, whenever I talk about my clients, I always use different names because I believe in discretion. All you have to do is talk to my business partner, Coach Jimmy, a former Broadway actor. He'll name drop everybody we work with, but I believe in discretion. So Richard is a very successful financial planner, and he used to begin his presentation. He's like, "My name is Richard. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've helped my clients make over $1 billion. I've worked with this famous person and this famous person." I'm like, "Richard, stop. It's all right to brag, but you're doing it in the wrong part of your presentation." Because when I'm teaching people how to connect with an audience, I say, former teacher, everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. I say in the first 5 minutes of your presentation, you need to rap. RAP stands for you need to show you're relatable, you need to demonstrate your authority, and you have to share your purpose. So relatable. Man, I am just like you. I've had that exact same problem. Authority. And I solved that problem. Purpose. Now I'm on a mission to help people just like you so you don't have to suffer the way I suffered. If you can do that in the first 5 minutes, you're doing a great job. And so we just changed Richard's presentation. So he starts off with this story from the very first client he was able to book 30 years ago. It's this comedy of errors. I have no idea why this person even invested money with him, but Richard noticed it immediately, Jory. So the way he gets clients is twice a week. He does these free steakhouse dinners for about 15 married couples that are in their 50s or 60s. He's trying to get them to invest their retirement savings with him. And so out of the 15 couples, he was getting about six of them to book an appointment with him. And of the six, one of them would hire him as their financial advisor. All it took was changing that story. The very next time he delivered, of the 15 couples, 12 of them booked the appointment and seven of them became clients. That's how he got his money. And what I loved about Richard is he's a very good student. He actually listened to me because he didn't trust me at first. He's like, "Oh, I'm changing everything to stories now, Danny." I'm like, "Absolutely, because we can get that number even higher." But I always say, so the process that I take clients through, again, former teacher, I call it the 5 C's. So before we put together the presentation, you need clarity. You need to know who's your audience and what's the problem you're solving. Once you're clear on that, then we can put together the presentation. You have to connect with your audience, teach meaningful content that serves your audience, have one clear call to action, and finally have an emotional close that gets people hopping out of their seats to work with you. And so when we talk about call to action and close, I told Richard, I said, you have to understand there's two types of people in your audience. And I'm going to be very stereotypical and say it's the man and the woman, the husband and the wife. So the husband, he's Joe Friday. He's sitting there with his arms crossed during your presentation, looking at you skeptically like, who's this person? What are they trying to sell me? What do I got to do? How long is it going to take? A very clear presentation needs to address all of those questions to satisfy Joe Friday. But the big mistake a lot of people make is they end with Joe Friday, ignoring the wife. The wife is Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, she doesn't care how much it costs. She just wants to feel good. I listen to Jory's podcast because it's like listening to my sister. I mean, she's great. I mean, I feel great after I listen to Jory. It's like taking a shower. I feel so much better. And so that's what a really well-crafted presentation is going to do, is to address all of those needs. And by using stories rather than, I mean, he was using numbers, and I'm not really a numbers guy. And here, we're going to talk Christianity right now. All you have to do to learn how to speak well is to read the Bible. I look at Jesus and I laugh every time I read about Jesus because I'm like, this is the most frustrated teacher on the planet. He's got these 12 dense guys around him. They never understand anything. He's like, all right, let me tell you a story. Storytelling. I bet you, Jory, 9 out of 10 non-Christians are familiar with the story of the prodigal son. They're familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan. They're familiar with the story of David and Goliath. But I also bet you 9 out of 10 Christians cannot tell you the 10 Commandments. And the reason is the 10 Commandments weren't presented as a story. They were presented as a PowerPoint slide with 10 bullet points that people forget immediately. That's the power of storytelling. People remember, it's just ingrained in us. You know, when I listen to people and they say, I'm not interesting, I don't know how to tell stories. I'm like, oh, really? You've never had dinner with a friend? Yeah. Oh, you didn't tell stories? Oh, yes, it's the same thing. And people think they have to be polished. I'm like, I don't know. I don't like I actually prefer people that aren't polished. Those are usually the best presentations. Some of the best speakers I know, you know, they don't have the slick back hair and the perfect suit. They're all messed up. I mean, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. She talks about vulnerability, and I completely agree with her. I think that's the biggest mistake most people make in their presentations is they brag all the time. And I always say, stop sharing your successes. Start sharing your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you share your own failures, the more your audience is going to see themselves in you. And that's what the goal of every presentation is to try to convince a person, hey, I need to work with Jory. This is a person that I trust. It's tougher than ever to get people to trust you nowadays. And the reason is because most people are using AI. I don't believe in artificial intelligence. I believe in authentic intelligence. And the way you show you're authentic is you show your bruises and your scars.
Okay, that needs to be a t-shirt.
All right. We'll go into business together, Jory.
Listen, I know a girl who could build a store, but
Perfect.
I don't believe in AI, artificial intelligence. I believe in authentic intelligence. All right, so if I were to end the podcast right now, no one would be upset. No one would be upset except me, because I have more questions. I have more questions. Danny, I have more questions. Listen, you compare reading mastery to speaking mastery. Like, what is that connection? Break that down for us.
Well, you were a former educator. I know plenty of readers that don't become necessarily effective leaders, but I can't name a single effective leader that also is not an avid reader. It doesn't matter what area, by the way. I mean, you look at industry, people like Elon Musk and Warren Buffett still are reading voraciously every single day. Presidents read like crazy. I mean, I always liked the story that President Kennedy was in a press conference and a journalist asked him what he was reading. And he said, "Oh, I'm reading this cool spy book about this guy named James Bond." MGM happened to be watching that press conference. They bought the rights to James Bond. That's why we have the James Bond movies, was because of a flippant comment from the president. Athletes, LeBron James, when he was playing for the Miami Heat before the NBA Finals, they showed him in the locker room reading The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I could have kissed him. I'm like, you just did more to get kids interested in reading than I'll ever be able to do. So reading, that's why I read. I mean, that's why you read. We're storytellers. I'm always looking for what's a cool story. And because there's so many, I was watching this horrible show on TV last week, Jory. It's called The News. And it totally depressed me. Just so negative. That's why I listen to your podcast. That's why I listen to podcasts. They're usually uplifting. I want things that lift me up. I mean, when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher in the school that none of my students were ever tardy. And the reason was because I always started off class by reading aloud a Paul Harvey story. I grew up listening to Paul Harvey when I was a kid. He'd come on every day at 12:15. He'd say, "And Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And for 5 minutes, he's telling you a story and you're trying to guess who it is or what's the company he's talking about. My kids loved it, but the problem was a lot of his stories are about Fred Astaire and Sears Roebuck. Well, kids today, they don't know anything about that. And so when I wrote my book, Leadership Begins with Motivation, this was an homage to Paul Harvey, but it had stories of more updated contemporary people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But then this was interesting, Jory. After I wrote it, I read it. I'm like, that's interesting. Completely unintentionally, a lot of my examples were of white male Americans. I'm like, And so then I wrote this book, Misfits and Crackpots, and most of the stories in this book are about minorities, women, and international people, because I think people need to hear about all the amazing things happening around the world. There's a great story. Actually, the inspiration for this book was there was these, since you're in New York, there's these two women choreographers in New York City. One's named Martha, one's named Agnes, and they're having coffee, and Agnes is complaining to Martha. She says, she's just opened up her third play on Broadway, and audiences seem to like it, but the critics have canned it. She's like, you know what, I'm just going to close it down. And Martha looks at her, she's like, you can't do that. It's not for them to criticize you. It's not even for you to criticize you. But you have to understand, there's only one you. There's never been another you. There's never going to be another you. But if you close down this play, you are denying the world your gift. Well, Martha was Martha Graham, who's considered the mother of modern dance. She wound up winning Kennedy Center honors and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Agnes, her friend, was Agnes DeMille. She won the same honors. She became the very first woman to have 3 concurrent hits on Broadway, and she kept her musical open, but she changed the name to Oklahoma. I want to hear stories like that all the time. I want to hear the stories about people helping each other out, because I think people are way too like this nowadays. I'm like, we need to be more like this. I mean, we're all in this together, and you can disagree. I think it's fine for people to disagree with one another. I don't think it's fine for people to be disagreeable to one another. I actually love surrounding myself with people that think differently than me. Before we were on air, I shared with you my favorite post-it on my desk asked me the question, what if I'm wrong? Because everybody's so sure of themselves. I guess the older I get, the more I realize I really don't know that much. John Wooden, the former UCLA basketball coach, said, it's the things we learn after we know it all that make the biggest difference in life. And I couldn't agree more.
I love that. I am bringing on a new caliber of humans to my show, and as part and such, I get to experiment. I want to try something. 2-minute rapid fire.
All right.
Quick answers. First thing that comes to mind.
Coming.
Are you ready, Danny?
I'm ready. Let's see if I can keep my answers shorter this time.
One word that defines great leadership.
Kindness.
Best
You
investment.
said the first word. I mean,
Listen, no, I love
the second word was integrity, but you said the first word. First word that came to mind.
kindness. Listen, I love that. What was the best investment you ever made in yourself?
Books.
A story that changed your life.
The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
What does impact mean to you?
Leaving the world a better place when I answer.
You did such a great job. Look, so much brevity. Loved it. It was fantastic.
Good.
Danny, this has been so powerful. Before we wrap, where can people connect with you, learn from you, learn about how to work with you, get some of those amazing books behind you I see on the shelf?
Well, as a thank you to you, Jory, and for your audience for having to listen to me this whole time, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody a complimentary, well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through to help you create your well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of what story should I use and where should I put it in my presentation. And what this means is you now have a system that can convert your audiences into clients. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. Again, I just want to thank you for all you do, Jory. And I guess my parting words, whenever I was teaching, whether I was teaching my little ones or my older ones, as they exited my classroom for the day, they always had to hear the same refrain. I always said, remember, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. Let's all go out, do the right thing, and make this world a better place. You're making the world a better place, Joey. I can't tell you how much I'm appreciative for you having me today and for all that you do. Keep on spreading your joy, my friend.
I appreciate you. Listen, people, your story is not random. It is not accidental. It is intentional, and it's meant to impact lives. Thank you so much, Dr. Danny, for pouring into us today. And to everyone listening, be an empowered person using your power to empower others. Till next time, people. Peace.
Tournaments of power.